All right, good morning. It is exactly 10:30, so we're going to go ahead and begin. Welcome to the equity panel and the series that we've been doing starting last week. A year ago this time, we had an equity panel series focused on a variety of topics that were really related to current events and issues of that day. So we're going to continue that series. I'll give a little bit of the context and then start with some introductions, and we're going to jump right into our questions. We have about 30 minutes together. Last week, we had 30 minutes with students and we had 30 minutes with staff. So really this week, our administrators aren't really joining, with the exception of Dr. Morrell, who may give some perspective about partnerships with law enforcement from a school perspective. I'm Dr. Anderson, the superintendent. As you all already know, this is actually being streamed on YouTube as well for other individuals to watch. If you individuals that are on the panel would like to make a comment to one another or to make a private chat, the chat box is open. If there's a question or thought that you have that you might want to put in there for us to either ask out loud or just to add as a comment, feel free to use that chat box because you certainly may do that. Again, we'll start with introductions, with the exception of the behind the scenes folks that are on the screen kind of helping navigate much of this. We'll go straight into the very first question, which I'll start off with just giving that overview. And then Dr. New will pick up, and as will Dr. Gray, and we'll be facilitating this together. First, let me say thank you for your time and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Everybody in the district is a blessing and a lesson, and we thank you for being the blessing that you are to all of our students. And so in Topeka, we celebrate all of our staff as teachers and educators. So thank you and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and turn it over first to the introductions. I've already introduced myself. I'll turn it over to Dr. Gray, Dr. New, and then Officer Dixon, and we'll go with the rest of the officers from there.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Gray, Director of Instructional Services for Topeka Public Schools, and I'm happy to be here this morning.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Burl New, and I'm the Director of Certified Personnel and Equity with Topeka Public Schools, and I'm glad to join this conversation with you all.
Officer Dixon, do you want to share where you are and how many years you've been serving either on the force and or as the SRO?
I am Officer Dixon. I have been with Topeka Police Department for just over 13 years, and I've been serving at Landon Middle School as the school resource officer for just over 7 years.
Thank you, sir. Sergeant Lightoff?
My name is Jeremy Lightoff, and I work at Topeka West as a coordinator with Topeka Public Schools Police Department, and I've been here 7 years.
Officer Gogan, and forgive me if it's a sergeant or captain, so I'll just reference everyone as officers, and you certainly can correct us on the appropriate reference as we move forward.
Thank you. I'm Officer Brandon Gogan. I've been on the department 13 years. Officer Dixon and I were in the same academy. And I've been here at TCALC as the instructor for the Law and Public Safety pathway for 2 years now, or coming up on the conclusion of 2 years.
Welcome. Officer Cortez?
Yes, I'm Officer Cortez, Topeka Public Schools. Been here about 4 years. I've been retired Topeka police officer for 25 years. I'm glad to be here at 501.
Thank you for being with us. Officer Wilson?
Actually, I'm signed on under somebody else's name here at French Middle School. I've got Darren Campbell with me. My name's Officer Sachs. I've been a Topeka police officer for 13 years. Officer Gogan and Officer Dixon and I were all in the same academy class. So in the last 5 years, I've been a school resource officer. I'm currently at Jardine Middle School. I've been at Robinson. I've also been at Eisenhower as well. So I've kind of seen both sides of the city and how things are going on from that aspect.
All right, thank you for being with us. Captain McCrae?
I'm Captain Charlie McCrae. I'm retired from Topeka Police Department after 25 years. I've been with 501 Police since August of 2010. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. And Captain McCray, if you're in the space with other individuals, if they can leave the space so then you can take off your mask, that way we can clearly hear you. Sometimes on YouTube, it's hard to hear through the mask. So if someone else is in your space, we'd ask that they transition out of the space so it's just you in that room. Thank you, sir. And then I believe we've gotten to all of our officers. Did I miss any officers that are on the screen with us today? We want to say a special thanks to both Travis True with Topeka Public Schools, Dr. McDonald, who's the improvement specialist with Topeka Public Schools, and Ms. Nordyke, who are all facilitating a portion of this electronic panel gathering for us. We thank them for that. Dr. Morrell, do you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Tim Morrell. I'm the principal at TCALC, which is Topeka Center for Advanced Learning and Careers, and I'm happy to be here this morning.
All right, thank you. I've given context to the conversation. We are really at an interesting time in our nation and certainly in our community. We met with students, and when we met with students, we showed them some headlines, and the headlines about what was occurring currently in the state of law enforcement in schools. You saw everything from defund the police to should school resource officers be in schools, and that was the springboard from the conversation which we had previously. From that, students, we learned quite a bit. Students shared their perception of the police prior to meeting an officer in schools, and then how that perception was changed after meeting officers in schools. They also talked about believing that perhaps the community officers were different than officers in schools in terms of relationship, and they shared many other things. That video, for those that are listening, is still taped and on our YouTube for those that want to go back and listen to our students' conversations. So on the heels of that conversation, we want to continue to educate ourselves and our public and learn more about school resource officers from our school resource officers. So again, we thank you for joining us today. Having had that context, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. New to get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. So for our audience today, and any of the officers can respond to this question, I think it might be important to know the scope of your duties within the school building. So would one of you please respond to this question? Just what does a school resource officer do?
I'd be happy to start. And if anybody has anything to add, I guess they're more than capable to do so. Basically, a lot of our duties that we do on a daily basis is mainly for the safety and security of the school, as well as the students inside and the staff members. That's one thing that I think is overlooked a lot of times, is we're definitely there for the students, but we also have a lot of staff members in each of these buildings also that we have to maintain a fairly high level of security to protect on a daily basis. We also do like to do a lot of patrols outside during the release of the students at the end of the day, as well as at the beginning of the day as well. There's always threats that need to be identified and looked into. We do a lot of different things with locking doors, making sure that staff members are fully trained and aware of the policies and procedures of any particular drill, whether it be a lockdown or something like that. We provide training to the staff members as well as the students. We also assist our building principals and other administration with identifying problems, making sure that there are any safety issues that are identified are also addressed promptly. And we also develop a lot of relationships with the students as well. There's often, I think all the SROs on here can talk to this, that there are times when I believe that students perceive law enforcement differently than they do school administration. There's a lot of times we go into classrooms to help with students who might be having some type of a problem, whether it just be a behavioral issue or even from a learning standpoint, from an educational standpoint. They respond to us a little bit differently. And I think we all have a core group of children within the school that we can respond to and that respond well to us. And we have the capability to help get them back on track for the day. And those are kind of our daily duties and the things that we do. I think 501 PD, they have a little bit different, I guess, work day compared to what we do. They're obviously in charge. They have a patrol function that they're in charge of patrolling their properties as well. In lieu of us, if it may not be a school that a Topeka police officer is assigned to, then they come in and they obviously take care of that as well. So I'll let them speak a little bit more in detail on their part.
I can speak to the 501 side of it. A lot of it is what Robbie Sachs has to say. We do a lot of that same stuff. I know for the officers that are in the schools, just like the guys in the middle schools, we have those select group of students that I think see us as an authority figure, but not like a principal, that we can bring into the office and have some heart-to-heart conversations with, that we can work with, that we can help on the educational side a little bit, and just help on maybe be a listening ear, things like that. And then we also do a lot of truancy, home visits, and patrolling of the elementary schools, and then other various properties that 501 has. So.
Thank you. We're going to go on to our second question, Dr. Gray.
Yes. Again, I would like to know, how can school resource officers be a bridge to communities of color? As our students shared that before meeting an officer in school, there was this fear of officers in the community. And since that, since meeting the SRO officers, that has changed. So how can we be that bridge for community of colors?
Officer Dixon, can you address that?
I think a big part of our role is education. The more that we are able to be a personal person within the building and educate our youth, our staff, our parents that come within our buildings of the role of the SRO is imperative. With social media and the news and everything else going around us, it's good to be that representative of our police department to kind of build that bridge and that connection with our staff and students and our 501 families in general, to let them see us as individuals, to really educate on what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And I think it's important for us to be out in the hallways, out at sporting events, in the classrooms, on the football field or basketball court with these kids and these families, and just to let them see us in a different light than what they may see on CSN or any sort of media outside of the school. I can't say it enough. Education. We get so drowned in what we see on TV and YouTube and Facebook that we forget there's individuals behind the badge and behind all the stuff that we wear. So I think it's really imperative that we build that gap or bridge that gap with our individual personalities and education on the policies and procedures of law enforcement, and just get in the classrooms. I do every year Constitution Week with the 8th graders, and they get to run through scenarios of law enforcement as applied to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they're able to ask those questions. And I think over the years, it's built that gap and given students an understanding of what we do and how we do it and why we do it. So the more we can put ourselves out there as individuals and as the police officers within our schools and our community, I think that the greater understanding and clarification that the 501 family is going to have on our capacities as a school resource officer, police officer, and an individual as a whole. And I think it's really important that we connect with everyone in our buildings, because some students have different understandings and experiences with law enforcement. So I think it's important for us as the law enforcement side to see what goes on in the community and how we can relate that to our in-school families and to those individuals that may be involved with some of the outside police stuff, that we can bridge that gap and kind of give them an understanding of what went down, how it went down, and explain to them kind of some of the things they saw or heard or may have been involved in.
That's very helpful. So communicating about community-wide kinds of issues, but also building relationship in the school, it sounds like really what you're talking about. and visibility. So that education piece, on the heels of that, since the question was about communities of color, I will ask Officer Cortez and Officer Dixon, I'm presuming you're African American just based on the screen, but I don't want to be presumptuous. All right. Officer Cortez, can you share what racial or ethnic identity you identify with? And for that question, how do you build a bridge with communities of color who may have a heightened fear? When he's done, Officer Gogian, I know that you play a different role. It looks like you're in a classroom right now. And if you can share that same question from a person that's not of color, of how do officers build a relationship with communities of color? And then we'll go to the very next question, question number 3 with Dr. New. Officer Cortez?
Yes, I believe the best way to start this communication with kids is during contact with the kids. Let them know you're a person, that you have kids, that you're concerned about their safety and welfare. And don't be shy bringing up the subject. It's on their mind, so address it abruptly. Just say, hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it, how you feel about things, and give them your perspective and their perspective. And somebody have to meet in the middle, have to come to an understanding that everyone has their views and opinions. You must respect their views and opinions, but able to understand where each other come from. A little bit of empathy and understanding goes a long way. At Hope Street Academy, where I'm assigned to, I meet with kids, talk with kids, and the more personal, the more knowing, get to know them, they treat you as a person, not just an officer or somebody they grow into trust. That's how you build a relationship with the community of color. I go under the ethnicity of Mexican American or other. Really, race doesn't play a factor of how I come across. I was a police officer for 25 years. I dealt with numerous race and ethnic or individuals. So you treat them the same as anybody else. That's the way you treat and respect them people. Treat them as you treat your sister.
So trust, empathy, relationship building are all been key as well in your environment. And you're working more in a high school. It sounds like Officer Dixon, we know that you're at a middle school. Officer Gogian, anything you want to add to that? And can you share what your role is? You know, we talked about the duties of school resource officers. You're an officer in a school, but your role is a little different. So how do you build that bridge with the community? And then we'll go to our next question.
Absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, I think to answer the question, it goes back to the root of why this program exists here. I'm at the Topeka Center for Advanced Learning and Careers, and I help educate for the Law and Public Safety Pathway. And when this partnership was created between the police department and 501, it was our agency really, for lack of better terms, putting their money where their mouth is. For years, we've said we want to be an accurate representation of the community that we serve. We want them to feel that we want home talent coming and working for Topeka and going back and serving that community, a community they're attached to and invested in. And when we worked with 501 to create this program, the department was saying, we're going to invest in that. We're going to put officers in the schools to be educators. They're not there for an enforcement capacity. They're going to be there to help guide young individuals who want to pursue a career in law enforcement or the other areas in the justice system and help them get to that point. We're not just going to say, hey, come back and see us when you're 22, 21, when you're of age, you've got your degree. Let's be an active part of that relationship and help get you where you want to be. Let's help you be successful in that career path. So here I teach a number of different courses inside of that pathway. And I've got students that have all sorts of desires. Some of them want to be prosecutors. Some want to be defense attorneys. Some want to be social workers. Some law enforcement. Some want to go into forensics. I mean, a really wide verse. Some want to be with dispatch, wide verse of individuals. And I'm able to work with them and help guide them along those paths and connect with some of our community partners in those areas and our advisory board members that represent those particular entities to make sure that they're on a path of success to be able to not only get those jobs when the time is right, but to be able to be wildly successful in those careers. And my students, I've found some success because they see that investment. They know that I care about them. They know that I care about their futures. We're able to have some of those hard conversations that Mr. Cortez talked about a little bit ago. They're able to bring their concerns to me. They have that person who can hear their voice, and they can share some of their concerns, and we can talk. And like Officer Dixon said, it gives us a chance to educate and to be able to speak about some of those things. But that education isn't always a one-way street. It's not me just always teaching them. They're able to educate me on their perspectives, on what young people need and want in our community, some of their concerns, things that they want to see out of law enforcement moving forward. And then I'm able to be that advocate for them too, amongst my peers in the law enforcement community, and be able to share that information with them. So I've always seen the teaching process in my classroom as a two-way street. I can learn from them as much as they can learn from me. And because we have that type of relationship, when they hit a crossroads, whether it be in their life or they have a friend going through something difficult and they're not sure what types of decisions to make, they're going through something tough with their families, I can draw from that experience, you know, in my career as a law enforcement officer in different facets, community policing, patrol, part of our academy. I'm able to reflect on those thousands of crossroads that I've seen people go through. And I can give them some of those examples of what happens when they go down the wrong path, what they can do to go down the right one, and kind of be a little bit of a counselor or a little bit of a guide when they're going through some of these tough situations. And then they're able to go and use that for themselves or share it with their friend or their sibling or their parent or whoever it is in their life and their community that's going through this struggle at the time. And I think a lot of times, from what my students have told me anyhow, is that they appreciate having that direct contact, having that person that they can go to when they have concerns with law enforcement, get an answer, or have someone that they know that loves and cares about them, able to give them information, and then they could trust that that information is for their best interest.
Thank you. You said a powerful comment about students educating us as adults, educating you as school resource officers in terms of perspective about community events, issues, things they're seeing, and having a resource, which Officer Lightoff kind of put something in the comment for all of us regarding that title, school resource officers. We have two other questions where we're going to peel back the layer a little bit. A comment was said earlier regarding discipline, and there's concern from community members as well about having police in schools, that when there's a discipline event that should be handled by administration or teachers, that officers are addressing that and being disciplinarians and perhaps even, you know, arresting young people and putting them in jail just because they're right there, and it's becoming a school to prison pipeline. So we want to talk about that a little bit, and what's reality in your world as it relates to discipline. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. New and Dr. Gray, and we'll kind of stick with that question for a little bit as we prepare these last 10-15 minutes. Dr. New.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Yes, most definitely. That is a point of concern for many community members, and this is a valuable opportunity for people to learn. But for those who may not actually know the purpose of school resource officers in the school and may even disagree with having them there, could you all share your platform? Should school resource officers be in public schools? And if so, why?
I'll jump on this answer. I would agree, yes, we should be in here. I think the younger the kids are exposed to law enforcement and the outcome, the long run of things, it's going to be better for them. It's basic science. If it's an unknown stimuli, you're going to be kind of put off. If you have a relationship at a very young age with a law enforcement officer, I think you're going to feel more comfortable should you ever be in a situation where you need assistance. I think it's very important for all races, but in particular African Americans who are at the forefront on media today, to have that positive relationship with law enforcement. As far as discipline, that is totally the principles. I think 501 does a really good job at hiring smart, innovative principals that know the boundaries between law enforcement and school administration. And we may be there to just make sure everyone's safe, but if the public could see the stats on arrests made in 501 schools, I think they would have a better understanding of how we are used and what we do. I can't say it enough. Education is probably the biggest tool that any one of us has. Education and getting in classrooms and getting in the hallways and being a part of the school community as a whole. I think it goes without saying as a positive to have SROs in schools. I would imagine all of us could vouch that we get students that are grown adults now that come back and will thank us and shake our hands, or see us out in public, that will scream across Walmart and come running over to say hi or just see how we're doing. And some of the faces I've seen from parents like, who is that? That's my old SRO from middle school. And they're just astonished that that relationship exists. I think as social media becomes more influential with our young people, I think it's important to have a real officer in the building to have those conversations with our students. And once those relationships are built and established, kids will come to us and ask us those type of things they see on TV. And I think it's a very strong thing to be able to give them a firsthand explanation as to what's going on in the world, in the community. So, yeah, I mean, I watched the panel last week with the students, and I think that evidence from their testimony is confirmation of how the youth views SROs in buildings, and that was coming from high school, middle school kids.
Thank you, Officer Dixon, for all of those comments. Is there anyone else that wanted to add to that before we go to the next question?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and apologize that I was a little late to the meeting. I had an appointment that I couldn't get away from, so Officer Sachs kind of held it down here for me until I was able to get here. My name is Officer Campbell, and I've been a Topeka police officer for about 25 years, and I've had the privilege of working in the schools for about the last 10 years. I also have got to work with Officer Gogian really close over at TCALC, so I've got to fill both of those functions kind of as an SRO, also as an educator. We both have been involved with the Explorer program, which is a program that's been around for a long time at the Topeka Police Department that takes in the area youth, and then we teach them law enforcement training and really look to push them into the law enforcement career later on. But to answer that question, we talk about arrests made in school and we're the disciplinarians. That I feel couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, we don't get involved in any of that stuff. And I would almost say that it's almost opposite. By having a school resource officer in the school that knows these kids, that gets to know them on a daily basis, I think arrests are probably less, because if they do get into a situation where the police need to be contacted and you had to take a street officer to come over and work that call, they may not know about the kid. We have the opportunity to bus duty in the morning, saying hi, hello to the kids when they get off the bus, working the lunches, getting to know them personally. Once they trust us, I shoot a lot of hoops with kids. I'm not very good at it, but I certainly shoot a lot of hoops with them. And you break down that barrier and they start to know you and they trust you. They come and tell you all sorts of stuff that's going on at home. And with our relationship with working with the school social worker, with the school counselor being right next door, we can send them to those resources to get them the help that they need. But going back to maybe they do get into a fight where maybe it could be a battery or against the law. With Officer Campbell working that here at the school, we can talk about that. And we are certainly not looking to arrest any kids. There might be some school discipline that comes down for the principal, but Officer Campbell's going to talk about it. Hey, here's what it is. Is battery, is it against the law? Absolutely it is. But we're going to make a couple of phone calls home, which I know you don't want me to do, but we're going to talk with parents, we're going to talk with teachers, and we're going to give you that opportunity to fix this behavior so that you don't get involved with the criminal justice system. So in my personal experience, opinions, I think arrests are way less by having the same officer in the same school, getting to know these kids each and every day. We do it in patrol work at the police department every day. We patrol the same territory for a reason. So we get to know the community, know the businesses, know what the routines are with that. With kids, you break down those barriers, you talk with them, they trust you, they come and they tell you stuff, and we are going to do everything in our power to not get them involved in the criminal justice system, to promote positive police contacts. But if you continue to cross that line, here's what could happen, because it is essentially against the law.
So that piece of promoting positive police contacts and really reducing the likelihood of moving into the prison pipeline is really, if used properly, could be a resource officer assisting with calling home, connecting with families, explaining why something in another setting can be a criminal act, but is managed in a different way within the school. All of those are ways that you sound like you play a role. And I saw everyone else kind of nodding their head as well. So thank you for that explanation. And the national data and trend data also shows that as well as it relates to school resource officers and arrests. Reality is other cities may well use resource officers differently. But what I hear you saying is that the manner in which you're utilized and we utilize it across Topeka Public Schools is not as disciplinarians, is not as individuals to be here to make arrests, but as individuals to have positive police contact and relationship. And if used that way, it can be a powerful and positive resource. With that, there are some also perhaps misconceptions about what you can do within schools and what you can't do. So we're going to turn it back over to Dr. Gray, ask the final question. And then if there's something we haven't asked, we know the time goes by fast, but we know you also have, in some cases, thousands of students in your school, and at the very least, hundreds of students in your school right now, and it's almost lunchtime. So we know we need to free you up to be available and visible. But with that final question, if there's something that you really want to share or share with the public, that's a great time after the final question. Dr. Gray, do you want to ask that last question?
Yes, Dr. Anderson. Again, we want to thank the officers. You did a great job at speaking to arrests, but can someone speak to how often we use tasers?
I guess I'll jump in there. I've had a taser for a lot of years, and I've used it 0 times since I've been in the school. Yeah, just no, I haven't even taken it off of my holster in the 10 years that I've been in the school.
So TPD, while you, for school-based involvement, it's never been used in the school from a TPD standpoint. Do you even have tasers on the TPS standpoint? Officer Lightoff?
No, we don't have tasers.
So Officer McCray, Captain McCray, we haven't really pulled you in the conversation just yet. Can you explain the difference between a TPS officer and a TPD officer? Because we do have 2 groups and many people may not realize that, but can you explain that, sir?
The Topeka Public Schools Police work under the guidance of 501 School District. Under your guidance, the Topeka police officers, they work under their chief, the mayor. They have certain guidelines that they have to follow, and tasers are one of the things that they have as a tool, where in 501 we don't have them. And as you see, there's no real need, because the TPD officers that do have tasers have not even used those tasers. They haven't taken them out of their holsters for any reason, and it's just not a tool that's used.
So the Captain McCray, is it fair to say the conversation, the relationship is really the tool and that we use as our weapon to, really diffuse the situation is really the weapon that we use, relationship more than anything else. Would that be fair to say, Captain McCray?
Yes, I've worked in schools as a patrol officer with 501 police. And the first thing I do is I go to a child and I get down on my hands and knees because they're on the ground or on the floor. And I introduce myself and I ask them, what is it that I can do to help you? What kind of problems are you having today that we can take care of? And normally it comes to the point where they're talking to me. I give them a fist pump. I explain to them we're friends when we fist pump, and they agree with that. And they open up and tell me what their problems are, and we get them solved. It's not that we're there to arrest and take people to jail or anything like that. We mainly want to get their concerns and see what problems they're having addressed and taken care of.
So, and Captain McCray, can you remind us how long have you been an officer and how long have you been in TPS?
I worked for Topeka Police Department for 25 years, and I've been here at 501 since August of 2010.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions or comments that perhaps we haven't shared or that you'd like to share. We're at the end of our time, but is there any comment or question that you'd like to share?
Today during lunch, we have a nice surprise.
And we hear Mrs. Hoffman talking about this nice surprise at French. It is Teacher Appreciation Week. And so as we know, many of you guys are getting ready for that lunch period. Is there any comment that you'd like to share that wasn't shared in this space? I think Dr. Morrell wanted to share perhaps a comment about some students that are moving into the career since he is at TCALC on the heels of Officer Gogian's comments. We really wanted to leave a majority of this for our officers, but I know Dr. Morrell wants to conclude with that. But is there anything else from our officers that you'd like to share as a comment before we allow for Dr. Morrell to share about our students? Officer Dixon?
I would just like you guys to understand and hear that us officers, and I would imagine they would agree, we consider these kids our kids, whether it be Christmas break, summertime, the weekend, whatever, wherever, we consider these kids our kids. And as I would do for my kids is always look out for their best interest, whether that be sitting down and having a conversation, whether that be talking to them as Father Dixon and not Officer Dixon. I consider these kids my kids, whether they're current students, coming students, old students, and I take that and I try to build those positive police contacts to heart because I want them to see me as a person, but also respect me as a police officer and as a human being, community member. And I would imagine we all agree that. So I want to thank you for trusting us to be a part of your school district and allowing us to have those experiences and these memories made with these kids. Because 13 years in the job, this current position is by far the most compassionate that I've been with TPD, and they're truly family to me. And I believe the kids here know that. So thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you. I see Officer Lightoff has a comment, and then we're going to go back to our French Falcon family over there since we have two people over there. Officer Lightoff?
I just wanted to share, it's all in that title. As a school resource officer, we're a resource to the administration, and so we help the administration out, try to in most any way we can. I know here at West, while we were doing the hybrid model and the remote model, we did a lot of deliveries. We delivered a lot of school supplies from the school. We delivered a lot of Chromebooks, Chromebook chargers. And so just serving as a resource. And then it's all about the relationships with these students and being able to be out there during lunchtime and then on my free time going to soccer games or softball games and interacting with them. And then one of the best opportunities we've had is for the last few years, 501 and the Topeka Police Department have partnered together with a summer camp. And you would not believe how many times I've been sitting at a restaurant with my family and kids come up and start talking to me, Officer Lightoff, or even now at the high school level. Hey, I remember you at the camp at French Middle School or at Robinson or this camp. And so just being a resource to them and sitting down and having those, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus conversations with some of these students and saying, hey, you need to start to change your actions. You need to start to change your attitude a little bit. Gives us that ability when we have those relationships with the students. So I think it's very important that we're in the schools and to serve as a resource.
Thank you, Officer Lightoff. We're going to go to our French Falcon family.
Thank you. Listen, I don't want to steal anything from Dr. Morrell or Officer Gogan where they're at over at TCALC, but just wanted to share a quick story about how we see how this whole process has worked with with how we work together. And I had a student at French years ago who maybe never really got in trouble, but was involved in a little bit of drama. But just through the relationship that we built with this student and her parents and working through some things, maybe necessarily didn't really care or like law enforcement all that much, but we worked through that. We had a great relationship. She understood who I was as a police officer, what I needed to do. But through that, she ended up going into the TCAL program because she was very interested in law enforcement. So today, many years later, that student is back at French Middle School doing an internship from TCAL because she wants to not only be a Topeka police officer, she wants to be a school resource officer because she wants to go in and help kids from like some of the issues that she used to deal with. So I think the partnership that we have with what we're doing with the TCAL, with the SRO program, it's working. And I think we all can share stories of many students who have been involved with that. But I'm, like I said, currently I have a student that comes every day for an internship that is a former Falcon who wants to be a law enforcement officer.
That's a powerful testimony on the school to career pipeline. Any other comment from the French Falcon family? I saw a hand up, then Officer Gogian. We are 10 minutes beyond our time, so after Officer Gogian's comment, Dr. Morell will give an update on that school to career pipeline from a TCAL perspective, if there's something to add, and then we'll close one out. For our French Falcon family.
The only thing I wanted to make sure to address was that there's a lot of studies out there that show that at-risk youth, their ability to learn and the educational process that they go through, safety is the #1 thing that they have to understand. And when they are in a sense of comfort and they know that they're safe at their school and they have the ability to grow and learn, that's the primary thing that I feel that we help assist with, is to keep the community and that school safe and allow those at-risk youth to be able to learn and grow in that environment.
Thank you for adding that. Officer Gogian?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll try to be really quick. I know we're running out of time. I really wanted to echo what Officer Dixon said about, since we came in together from the same academy, we've had a lot of parallels in our career, but this is the most rewarding thing I've done in my career, the most influential thing I think I've done, to where I've had a direct impact on individuals. And I wanted to thank the district for allowing us the opportunity to do that, because not only do I think we're able to help people, but I know that it has made me a better officer from my engagement and interactions with my students. So thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to do this and to be in your schools.
Mr. Renfro and Mr. Hamilton.
Perfect timing. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Morell, and that research, perhaps when we post this, we're going to be posting some of the comments that were made and just directing people to that YouTube page, and then even posting some of that research, which that basic need for schools is safety and food needs and shelter being met. And so thank you for mentioning that piece of creating that safe environment and for making sure kids feel safe when they come in. Dr. Morell, do you want to speak to that school to career pipeline that you're able to create and make happen by having school officers within schools at an early enough age?
Well, it's great that these officers are here today. And I wanted to say that a lot of times you hear about officers being in law enforcement, people don't really think about them being members of what we call the helping professions. And I heard that word mentioned 3 or 4 times this morning about helping each other. So when we think about police officers, we really should refer to them as helpers, because they are in a helping profession. At TCAP, we have the opportunity for students to learn about law and public safety. That's just one of the pathways, but it's been a great partnership. And we have, as Officer Campbell mentioned, students now that are in work-based learning opportunities that are going to really lead to great careers in law enforcement. But that's also true of the various pathways that we do have at TCAP.
And Officer Morell, I'm sorry, Dr. Morell, were you an officer at one point as well?
Yeah, I was listening to the number of years people have been in law enforcement, and yes, I've been in law enforcement, or was in law enforcement, for 26 years, both as an officer and as a chief and as an instructor.
And now serving as principal at TCAL, where you've been for some years, and a director in schools prior to that in other districts. We've given pretty much a view of the various careers in the from education from a principal perspective, former officer, to also what you do as school resource officers. We didn't acknowledge, but I do want to thank Chief Generette for freeing up our TPS officers. He's kept himself appropriately so, just kind of screened out just as a listener, just to know he's here as a resource. We also want to thank our interim chief at the TPD for also allowing our TPD staff to participate today and for freeing you all up. So with that, as we close on out with those final comments, we trust that the community, as they've listened, they've learned quite a bit, but that key piece of relationships is so important. Dr. McDonald is pulling up that article that was on CJ Online last week as a reminder if you haven't seen it. And that article are really middle and high school students talking about how their perception was changed just by meeting an officer in schools. And I think perhaps said so well by DeAndre Hicks, a Topeka High student, who really spoke to the best way to create change is to connect with kids at an early age. And that's how you change mindsets and build great relationships. And so with that article that's out there, that continues to be out there, many of our students' perspectives are listed within that article. And we would encourage our listeners to read that. And hopefully all have learned a bit today. We're going to take that article off the screen. Again, thank you so much. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. And we also want to say today is a day to celebrate Cinco de Mayo for those that are also celebrating Cinco de Mayo. As we know, we have one Mexican American also on our screen today, and many that we serve across the district. Again, thank you for keeping us safe. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye-bye.